Spectro Solutions, Volume 4, read by Sebastian Brown. Chapter 8. Child's Play. The Haunted Play Center was a modern building with a large and dusty glass facade, nestled in a sprawling industrial estate in East London. The glass was adorned with pictures of colorful balloons and friendly cartoon characters that now appeared distorted and unnatural in the evening's fading light. As the team stepped inside, they were immediately greeted by the echoes of children's laughter and the pitter-patter of tiny feet. The play center was deserted, but there was something else in the air, a presence that made the team shudder.
"Did you hear that?"
whispered Gina, her voice trembling slightly.
"Don't worry, it's probably just the wind,"
replied Lindsay. Her eyes betrayed her uncertainty. The walls groaned under the weight of dried goo and peeling paint, and the floor crunched beneath their feet. A thin layer of dust blanketed the once vibrant carpet, dulling the cheerful colors. But it was the main playroom that held the team's gaze, a cavernous space bathed in the flickering glow of fluorescent tubes.
"Stay close,"
Alex instructed, his voice little more than a breath. In the center of the playroom stood a colossal climbing frame, disguised as a brightly colored castle. Cargo nets stretched like spiderwebs, ropes dangled like forgotten hopes, and twisting slides, once teeming with life, now wound silently through its heart. A large ball pit sat nearby, filled with a dark, murky goo that seemed to move on its own. Spread around the playroom were large foam shapes that children could climb on and play with. The shapes seemed to shift and contort, animated by some mysterious power. Two small tricycles rocked back and forth on their own, their wheels squeaking like trapped mice. "Well, that's unnerving," muttered Jamie. Alex was the first to respond to the perceived threat, his Spectro lashes flaring to life as the rest of the team quickly followed suit. A loud cluck echoed through the playroom, and suddenly, the ghost materialized before them. It was a translucent, yellow chicken ghost, around 3 feet in diameter, with little wings and no legs. It looked like a big, round marshmallow, with huge black eyes and a tiny beak. Its feathers ruffled as it eyed the intruders. For a moment, no one moved, their eyes wide as they took in the absurdity of the spectral chicken floating before them. Alex's mind raced, struggling to reconcile the innocent appearance of the ghost with the unsettling aura that filled the play center. His heart pounded in his chest, and he felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple.
Is that a chicken?"
he said, unable to suppress the mix of confusion and fear that gripped him.
"Aw, it's kinda cute,"
Gina cooed. The ghost responded by launching a sponge ball. It bounced lightly off Gina's head as she blinked in surprise. The ghost had a mischievous look in its eyes, as if it knew it was about to have some fun. Alex lunged first, cracking his spectro lashes like a lion tamer. The spirit slipped out of the way, leaving behind a faint trail of goo and feathers, as it bobbed up and down in the air like a toy boat on a canal. Gina tried next, her own lashes cutting through the air with precision. The ghost evaded her attacks with ease, clucking as it dropped to the ground with a resounding splat before rolling away. Jamie and Lindsay joined in. Jamie swung his lashes low, but the spirit dodged, hopping onto a miniature trampoline and bouncing away with surprising agility. Lindsay, always the strategist, circled around to try and corner the ghost, but it was too fast, zipping past her just as she snapped her lashes. The ghost zigzagged around the room, a blur of neon yellow weaving through a jumble sale of discarded toys as the team followed closely behind. A stack of wooden cubes clattered to the floor as the ghosts sped past, their hollow thuds punctuating the rising chaos. Alex dodged just in time to avoid a flying teddy bear that whizzed by his ear. Meanwhile, Jamie stumbled over a scattered set of bowling pins, arms windmilling as he barely managed to keep his balance. The ghost squawked as it sent an old football bouncing off the walls, the rubbery echoes reverberating through the playroom as the group quickly ducked for cover. With a loud chirp, the ghost zipped towards the towering castle and disappeared into its shadowy depths. The castle loomed before the team. They hesitated, exchanging a quick glance, before plunging in after the spirit. The ghost darted left, then right, its clucks echoing off the walls as it led the team on a frantic chase. They followed it through the neon-lit climbing frame, their groans filling the air as they climbed cargo nets and slid down plastic slides like they were playing snakes and ladders. Instinctively, the team split up. Jamie took the high ground on the nets, and Alex disappeared down a long chute, while Lindsay and Gina dashed through a colorful tunnel.
"Someone wrangle that thing!"
barked Jamie. Lindsay's lashes barely grazed the ghost's spectral tail as it dissolved through a colorful platform, leaving behind a shimmering puddle of goo.
"I'm trying,"
she shot back.
"It's harder than it looks. Maybe we should have designed Spectro sacks,"
laughed Gina as she danced around the glowing puddle.
"That way! No! Over there!"
shouted Jamie from his vantage point on the nets, his voice echoing commands as the ghost slid down slides and vanished around corners, always just out of reach. Slowly, the team converged in the middle of the castle, eyes darting in every direction.
"Where is it?"
asked Alex, trying to steady his breath. Jamie's gaze shifted upward, his eyes widening as he lifted a finger and pointed.
"There,"
he whispered. High above, the chicken ghost hovered, its form bubbling and swelling, pulsing with an otherworldly glow. It began to descend, its body spinning gently at first, like a feathered disco ball. But then, the ghost's spinning grew more frantic, quickly becoming a whirlwind of translucent feathers. Without warning, it unleashed a torrent of goo, spewing in all directions like a possessed sprinkler. The team barely had time to react before they were engulfed. They hit the deck, covering their heads, but it was no use. The spinning ghost coated them in a gooey, feather-filled tidal wave. Lindsay froze, her gaze fierce with fiery resolve.
"Right. I've had enough of this poultrygeist,"
she bellowed as the team scrambled to their feet, covered in goo.
"I swear, this ghost is worse than a Jack Russell on Red Bull,"
cried Jamie.
"No more clucking around."
The chicken ghost let out a weary but defiant cluck, drawing the team back out of the castle. Exhausted from the attack, it perched itself atop a large foam cube in the middle of the playroom. Its feathers ruffled, and its dark eyes darted between the team as they slowly surrounded it, spectro lashes crackling with energy.
"Any last words, you little chicken?"
Alex grinned, sweat dripping down his forehead. The ghost hesitated, its tiny beak opening as if to speak. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, its eyes narrowed, and it lunged at Alex. The team was ready. They swung their lashes in unison, quickly wrangling the ghost in a web of spectro energy. It squawked in protest, feathers flying as it desperately thrashed against its bonds. With a final, last-ditch effort, it nearly lifted the team off the ground. But the struggle was in vain. It was already too late. Lindsay threw a Spectro book under the ghost, and in a split second, it was pulled inside the spectral prison, leaving behind the faint smell of fried chicken. The air fell silent. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the team. The spirit's energy was contained within the Spectro book, and the play center was finally free from the ghost. As the reality of their victory sank in, Gina plucked a gooey feather from her hair and glanced towards the front of the play center. Her eyes widened as she noticed lights filtering through the glass. Silhouettes moved beyond the grimy windows, and the faint hum of voices grew louder. Curiosity piqued. She stepped closer, peering out into the darkness. Her heart skipped a beat. A crowd had gathered, pressing against the glass, their faces hidden by the harsh glare of camera lights. Reporters jostled for position, microphones ready, while onlookers whispered excitedly, smartphones raised to capture every moment. Gina turned back to her teammates, her voice shaky with a mix of excitement and nerves.
Guys, we've got company. Looks like the call you put in worked, said Alex to an excited Jamie.
Jamie burst out of the play center, flailing his lashes wildly and shouting to the cameras like a pro wrestler.
Oh yeah, that's right. You just witnessed the first professional ghost wrangling team in action, Jamie roared, swinging one of his glowing lashes and accidentally whipping a cameraman. Oof, sorry about that, mate. That's right. We catch ghosts, you all saw it. You got a ghost you need gone? You call us.
Lindsay rushed over and quickly shooed him away.
What is going on?
Cried one of the reporters.
Hi, hello.
Lindsay spoke into a microphone that was thrust towards her.
Yes, that's right. We are professional ghost wranglers.
The crowd buzzed with excitement, cameras capturing every moment.
That's amazing. We got it all on video,
exclaimed one of the reporters as she turned to face her cameraman.
And how can people get in touch if they need your assistance? Asked another reporter. You can find me on WowPix at G Loves Dreams, shouted Jamie. That's G-E-Y.
Jamie! Lindsay quickly cut him off, throwing him a disapproving glance.
We're just setting up a hotline and a website, said Lindsay.
And what's the name of your company? Said one of the cameramen.
We're called Spectro Solutions, called Gina.
Lindsay peered over her shoulder at Gina before looking back at the crowd.
Yep, that's right. We are Spectro Solutions, she said with a smile.
And with that, the word was out. Spectro Solutions was here, and Gina and Lindsay had a website to build. Chapter 9. 2 for £3. Camden's Stables Market was a chaotic tapestry of life, a place where vendors hawked their wares amid a throng of tourists and hurried locals. Once a hub of equestrian trade, the area had evolved into a vibrant marketplace, a melting pot of creativity and commerce. Its history echoed in the aging brickwork, while its present thrummed with the energy of artists, artisans, and entrepreneurs. A sea of colors, scents, and sounds filled the air as shoppers explored stalls brimming with vintage treasures, handcrafted oddities, and mouth-watering food. Amidst this bustling scene, a strange figure in a black suit glided through the cobblestone streets, his pale face obscured by shadows, and his crimson eyes glinting with a predatory intensity. An unnatural energy crackled in the air as he strolled through the heart of the market. His steps were deliberate, as if he knew exactly where he was going. The market-goers glanced at him, curiosity etched on their faces as he passed by. None dared approach. There was an air of danger about him, a dark energy that set him apart from the mundane. The usual cacophony of shouts, haggling, and music seemed to dim. a spotlight cast upon his chilling presence. Tourists and stall owners alike flinched, an instinctive fear taking hold. He wasn't here for bargains. His gaze swept across the market and settled on a lone vendor adorned with feathers and bone trinkets. The vendor sat impassively behind a stall overflowing with an eclectic assortment of curiosities, shimmering liquids, dusty amulets, and boxes adorned with arcane symbols. His eyes, as black and bottomless as obsidian, held a vacant, almost otherworldly quality. The man in the suit approached, his steps silent despite the uneven cobblestones.
"Thorn!"
the vendor rasped, his voice like dry leaves rustling in the wind.
"I haven't seen you in a very long time. Ever since—"
The man's humorless tone cut him short.
"Indeed, but I am here on business."
He reached into his suit pocket and produced a tiny swirling orb of spectral energy. It pulsed with a sickly orange light that cast an unsettling glow on the vendor's face. Inside the orb, a wisp of shadow writhed and twisted, hinting at some kind of intelligence. Thorn leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a low murmur.
"I need information. A permanent connection. My companions back at the tower. They grow restless. I need a way to bring them to London. My current method of travel is inconvenient. These fleeting portals leave much to be desired."
The vendor's eyes flared, a spark of curiosity flickering within them.
You don't have to threaten me, Thorn," he said. "Companions? And what kind of companions might those be? Not the echo hunters, I hope?"
Thorn remained impassive, but a hint of annoyance flashed across his face.
"That's of no concern to you. Tell me, is there anything you can offer?"
The vendor's eyes narrowed, a flicker of amusement dancing in their depths.
"A permanent gate, you say? That's a tall order, Thorn. Even magic has its limitations."
He paused, studying Thorn's expression, gauging the limits of his patience. Then his smile widened, revealing a row of sharpened teeth.
"There might be something, an artifact of immense power, rumored to open doorways between realms. They call it the Erebus Gate."
Hope sparked in Thorn's eyes, but it was quickly extinguished by the vendor's next words.
"Of course, activating such a device requires a bit more than just a pretty face,"
he chuckled.
"Something you seem to be lacking. Wouldn't you agree?"
Thorn's face hardened. The vendor's amusement was tangible, a mockery that clawed at his patience. He stepped closer, the air between them tightening like a vice.
"Perhaps,"
he growled.
"but I can learn. Tell me, where is this Erebus Gate?"
The vendor shook his head, amusement replaced by a hint of fear. His fingers trembled as they traced patterns on the table.
"The gate itself is hidden, actually, along with the key."
Thorn's skeletal jaw clenched, his eyes flashing with anger. He took a step closer, his voice low and menacing.
"I haven't got time for this. Tell me where it is,"
he growled. The vendor's hand trembled as he reached for an intricate cage on his display.
"Look, Thorn, we don't need those monsters running around," he pleaded. "Perhaps a more manageable companion, familiar to ease your travels."
"I have no need for this,"
said Thorn, shoving the cage aside. His gaze burned with barely contained rage.
"Listen closely, and listen well,"
he rumbled.
"I don't like the living, and I don't like you. The gate. Tell me where it is, before I do something we'll both regret."
The vendor's gaze lingered on Thorn's hand, where the spectral orb pulsed. He hesitated, his voice dropping to a whisper.
Okay. It's in the British Museum, in a lab below."
Thorn's voice was icy, each word laced with threat.
"A wise decision."
The vendor, still trembling, nodded rapidly.
I don't want any trouble, Thorn. I've told you everything. Please, just leave me be."
With a swift and brutal motion, Thorn held up the spectral orb, admiring the orange glow for a moment, before plunging it into the vendor's chest. A dark energy filled the air as the vendor's form imploded, like water spiraling down a drain. His scream died in his throat as he disintegrated into a swirling green mist that seeped into the cobblestones below. Thorn's gaze remained cold, his expression unyielding. The market around him fell into a hushed silence, the usual sounds reduced to an eerie stillness. Suddenly, a spectral figure emerged from the earth, as if it were clambering up a ledge. First, a huge, translucent blue hand appeared, grasping a huge riding crop. Then another, before a horrifying head emerged. The ground trembled, protesting the supernatural intrusion, but the spirit was determined, its foot seeking purchase on solid ground. With a surge of power, the spirit braced itself and stepped up, like a swimmer emerging from a pool. It stood nearly 7 feet tall, a towering figure shrouded in a faded carriage driver's uniform. The tattered clothing clung to its frame like a bad smell. Its sunken eyes were deep and hollow, windows to a tormented soul, while veins drew a map across its face like rivers of despair. Its cheekbones shot out like shards of broken glass, and its mouth was a jagged line of crooked teeth. This wasn't the ghost of the vendor. It was something else. It turned to Thorn. No words were spoken, only a silent understanding as he nodded. Thorn's eyes gleamed with a mix of grim satisfaction and anticipation. He took a seat in front of a small juice stand, refusing to take his eyes off the spirit even for a second. He could feel the crowd's fear swelling, feeding him, fueling the dark energy within. Lifting the riding crop, the ghostly carriage driver brought it smashing down on a nearby food stall. The wooden structure exploded under the blow, scattering cakes and pastries like confetti. The air itself seemed to hold its breath as the spirit looked to Thorn for approval.
"Carry on, then,"
he murmured, his voice barely audible over the gasps of the crowd. The market erupted into chaos as the ghostly figure unleashed its fury. Shoppers stumbled over each other in a desperate attempt to flee, their faces pale with terror. Screams pierced the air, blending with the sound of splintering wood and shattering glass, as fear rippled through the crowd like a wave. The once bustling market became a frenzy of panicked souls, each one scrambling to escape. Yet, even as panic swept through the crowd, Thorn remained seated. He watched gleefully as the spirit's rage consumed everything in its path. People fled the market as fast as they could, their bags abandoned, and a desperate cry rang out in the mayhem.
For God's sake, someone call Spectro Solutions!
Chapter 10. New Era. The evening sun soaked Alex's kitchen in a warm hue, casting an orange glow around the room. It was an ordinary evening for most, but for Alex and his friends, it would be another night of chasing the extraordinary. In the months that followed the invention of the Spectro gear, Spectro solutions had become highly sought after. Their reputation for efficiently handling supernatural entities had spread like wildfire ever since their televised debut. Now, the phone rang constantly with anxious citizens reporting ghost sightings, and their inbox was flooded with pleas for help. Alex's house had become the team's unofficial headquarters. 2 computer monitors sat on the kitchen counter, displaying various CCTV feeds across the city, and thick black cables snaked from the wall to the floor where the team's power packs sat charging. The team had been working tirelessly, responding to various emergencies across the city, while also attending numerous scheduled appointments. The only problem they faced was finding a place to store all the captured spirits. The shelving unit in Alex's hallway was quickly becoming overwhelmed with the growing number of spirits. It was clear that the team needed a proper headquarters, but with their busy schedule, it was a problem they would have to tackle later. For now, they were focused on keeping the people safe from any pesky ghosts or spirits. After all, the spiritual invasion had not slowed but surged, as a wave of spectral activity had engulfed London. The ghosts had grown bolder, their numbers had swelled, and their power had intensified. Spirits of all shapes and sizes were drawn to the metropolis as if summoned by some unseen force. For every spirit they captured, 2 more seemed to take their place. The team had been called in to deal with a whole host of spectral entities. The possessed statue of Lord Nelson in Trafalgar Square, a spectral hippo that had halted trains at King's Cross Station, and a large group of ghosts that had rudely interrupted a production of Hamlet in the West End. Despite the overwhelming influx of cases, the team wasn't complaining. The pay was good, and they had plenty of Spectro books to store the ghosts in. But questions hung in the air. Why now? What had changed? As the cases stacked up, so did the weight of Alex's unease. He stared at the cigarette smoldering in his fingers. The weight of the world seemed to press down on him heavier than ever before. What if this was all his fault? While the Spectro gear was initially designed for profit, the recent flood of ghostly activity made him wonder if he had only made things worse. His invention had drawn a line between the living and the dead. He couldn't shake the feeling that it had provoked the spirits, antagonized them in some way. Was his team actually helping, or were they just managing a crisis that he had inadvertently triggered? The thought left a sour taste in his mouth. Suddenly, the sound of an antique horn bellowing outside in the car park made him jump. He looked around wide-eyed before settling back down with his tea, unfazed. His phone dinged. It was a voice message from Lindsay.
"Come outside then, you dimlo."
He stubbed out his cigarette and dragged himself to his feet. As he rounded the corner into the car park, he was greeted with a surprise that would mark a brand new chapter for the team. Lindsay and Gina sat in a strange vehicle, grinning like Cheshire cats. "What is this?" exclaimed Alex as he jogged over to greet them. It was a 1953 Bedford KZ ambulance. Its once gleaming magnolia paint had faded to a dull, weathered hue, with patches of rust spreading like freckles across the bodywork. The chrome trims, once polished and bright, had acquired a muted glow under layers of grime. And although the headlights were now foggy and yellowed, they still peered out like the eyes of a faithful puppy. Despite its antique appearance, the ambulance gave off a sense of enduring reliability. "It's our all-new emergency response vehicle," Gina announced with a bounce as she stepped out of the ambulance. "And watch this! Lindsay, hit it!" In an instant, the vehicle sprang to life, its ancient sirens howling and red and blue lights flashing. Alex's face lit up. "So, what do you think?" asked Lindsay as she clambered out of the driver's seat. "It needs a bit of love, some suspension work, some new shocks and brakes, probably new brake pads, linings, definitely a new steering box, transmission, rear tires, front tires." "Wait, what? Lindsay?" Alex's stomach dropped. He stared at the vehicle, his enthusiasm tempered with concern. "And how much did you pay for it then?" he asked cynically. Lindsay's grin widened. "It's mine. You know I like collecting memorabilia from old sci-fi and horror films. Well, this is a prop from the movie Petticoat Zombie. Anyway, I got it at an auction years ago. It's just been sitting in my parents' garage gathering dust." Just as Lindsay finished speaking, Jamie rounded the corner, hauling a hefty cardboard box. "Oh my God!" he bellowed. "The Spectro one! No, wait. The Spectro wagon! No, hold on. I've got it." In harmony, Jamie and Gina declared, "The Spectro mobile! Oh yeah!" Their enthusiasm was contagious. Even the old ambulance seemed to hum with approval. But Jamie wasn't done. "Well, seeing as we're doing show and tell," he placed the box on the ground. "I've got something to present to the class as well." With a quick flick, he flung open the box. It was filled to the brim with stickers, hundreds of them all neatly arranged. Jamie had come up with a logo for the team, a cartoon ghost ensnared by a bold purple X, symbolizing their lashes and their no-nonsense approach to handling the supernatural. A playful nod to the Jolly Roger. He began plastering the stickers all over the ambulance, like a fly poster on a Thursday night. "This will let everyone know who we are and what we're about," he exclaimed, laughing to himself. But as the ambulance was slowly being transformed into a patchwork of ex-ghost logos, Lindsay quickly intervened. "Jamie, can you ease up, please? I actually need to see out of the windows." Gina let out a chuckle. "That logo is bloody amazing, Jay. We've got it booked in for a full service at the weekend. We're getting it fully pimped out. We can get that logo painted on as well." As if on cue, the team's hotline buzzed in Lindsay's pocket, and she quickly answered. Uh-huh. Oh no. Don't worry, we're on the way." "Who was that?" asked Alex. "Kentish Town Police," said Lindsay. "They want us to head to Stables Market. You can probably guess why." The team grabbed their Spectro gear and piled into the rusty ambulance, quickly speeding off as the faded sirens blared in the evening's dimming light. And that wraps up Volume 4 of Spectro Solutions. With enigmatic enemies and long-buried artifacts beginning to surface, the stakes have never been higher. Will our heroes rise to the occasion, or will the encroaching darkness prove insurmountable? The answers await in Volume 5. Stay tuned, and as always, thank you for listening.